Today we're going to be doing a question and answer video. So with the new year, I thought it'd be interesting to go back and pull some questions from various videos. I also asked the patrons over on our Flames of War Patreon if they had any questions, and I thought we would go through those and get you the answers. So without further ado, let's jump into some questions to AMGAS, okay? So let's start with Patreon. Mr. Fox asks, in my area, central Indiana, Flames of War Team Yankee is more or less dead with no one to play with. Are there any communities online you know to help others find to play with? That's tough. I mainly just hang out on the Flames of War Facebook pages. Maybe there's a gaming Facebook group or something like that in your area that you could look at. Maybe look at some tournaments in nearby states. I don't know how far you're willing to travel. A lot of tournaments can be pretty friendly to first-time gamers. So I would suggest that, but otherwise I don't have some special resource, and I don't think Flames of War has a player locator. If they do, it's on their website, not super easy to find, but I would recommend maybe checking that out as well. Andrew says, are there any factions you'd like to see introduced in the future for Team Yankee? I'm thinking Italians or Hungarians in Europe, or China and Koreas in Asia. You know, I would think that, there's the Tom Clancy book where Russia and China go at it, the Bear and the Dragon, something like that. So that could be interesting, kind of a hypothetical Russian-China battle. So I could see that. The Koreas, I would almost say, before I see them in Team Yankee, I would like to see like a Korea expansion for Flames of War. I think that would be interesting. But no, not off the top of my head. I think Chinese might be interesting. Let's see, this Jan. Why are all the battles fought in the Netherlands with no hills or elevation? Is there a reason for such a flat environment? Well, one, it's just my collection. I don't have a ton of hills, and maybe I need to pick up some more hills. The problem with hills are, game-wise, we find, at least in our group, when we have hills, just armor tends to just congregate, hull down on the top of the hills. When you're up on a hill, anything lower than you doesn't get the benefit of cover anymore from low terrain. So when you have a hill, it negates most of the terrain on the board, at least the low terrain. So I tend to use it sparingly. We do have some battle reports with some hills, but you're right, not a lot. And for ease, when you're using a gaming mat and everything's going to be flat, I suppose if you sculpted, in foam, kind of undulating hilly terrain, then line of sight would be much more realistic and pretty cool. But that's a lot more work, and sometimes you just want to throw something out on the table and have a game. So that's why. But yeah, maybe I'll invest in some more hills or add some more hills in some upcoming battle reports. Okay, let's see. I think these are some YouTube comments now. Shawshank, maybe. I have a budget of $40. What's the best terrain I could buy in that? $40 for terrain isn't a lot. But if you're talking about historical, you could buy things like Woodland Scenics has little tree armatures and clump foliage, and you could make your own stuff like that, trees. Buy felt and cut out shapes for woods. $40 just doesn't go very far buying pre-made terrain. $40 is like one big building from Battlefront. $40 doesn't even, it's like half of what you would need to buy a terrain kit for $40K, just one box. So terrain can get pretty pricey unless you're willing to build it yourself. So $40 could go a long way towards picking up some supplies to building it yourself. but you're going to have to invest more time when you build. So I would say that the best terrain you could buy would be homemade terrain. Look at Woodland Scenics and others, maybe on Alibaba or some of those express websites. You can buy cheap little Christmas trees like this, and packages for decorations. That could be pretty cheap. No, just look around, but primarily the best bang for your buck if you're looking to save money is building it yourself out of cardboard and trees and sticks in your yard and rocks and whatever. So that's going to save you the most money, but it does take time. It's always a trade-off. Like, yes, I could build a lot more custom terrain, but I'd rather spend that time building models and just buy the terrain so that I can throw it on the table really fast. But it's always a trade-off, and different people like different aesthetics. Okay. Vicky says, well explained, this is in regards to a video, but I really don't like Flames of War, don't like seeing tanks squashed together. Well, that's totally a legitimate complaint. The kind of parking lot with tanks is, it doesn't look that good on the tabletop, you're right. I think Flames of War and games like it tend to have a sliding scale as far as how things work. For example, a tank's main gun is 28 inches, but a rifle is 16 inches. So real world, that just doesn't work out numbers wise, but on a tabletop it does. I think the hub to hub lines that you see in a game like Flames of War are just it's partly because of the rules, it's partly because how you place your terrain, it's partly the size of the armies you're playing with. If Soviets are taking a T-34 company with 31 tanks in it, it's going to be hard to not line them up hub to hub, particularly in the beginning. If you have some very high expensive tanks and not very many of them, you probably won't see hub to hub. So it's a kind of a combination of all of those. But if you don't like it, you don't like it. There's other game systems out there, or you could play Flames of War with smaller, like 6mm models, same ranges and distances, but everything is tinier. So yeah, you might look at that. Let's see. Dane says, I hate seeing weapons on the table that should never be engaging in direct fire with the enemy units. It's now a tank emphasis game, and infantry armies are incapable of winning against a comparable force comprised of armor. Is that true? So I'll talk about two things. One is the heavy, large caliber artillery. I think Flames of War is addressing that. In version 4, they did get rid of the towed higher caliber, like 155mm guns. Those are no longer options, except for mobile ones like the M12 with the 155 or Priests, things like that. You'll still see 105s on the table, 105mm, but yeah, they've done a little bit of removing it. I think ideally you wouldn't see even 105mm on the table. You'd have a side table with all your artillery. But I just think that gets more complicated for what Flames of War is anyway, which is kind of a quick World War II experience game rather than hyper detailed. So if you've got another system you prefer better, that's totally cool. All right, your other thing was, are infantry armies incapable of winning against a comparable force comprised of armor? Is that true? Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. There's a lot of factors in that. First and foremost, it's terrain. If you are a defending infantry army in a cityscape like Stalingrad, a tank army is going to have a really hard time getting rid of you because you can't assault into buildings. Tanks can't assault infantry in buildings. You need infantry, which is really true to life. If you're on a bowling alley table and there's hardly any terrain, infantry armies are going to struggle. I think one of the things though is look at what's winning tournaments. I'm seeing a lot of German Panzer Grenadier lists. Now that's armored infantry, but it's primarily infantry and static guns. You'll see those 88s, pack fronted or not. all the time. So tank armies aren't always winning the high level tournaments. So I don't think that it is. But when you play, look at that. If you're going to be playing an infantry army and your friend's going to be bringing a tank army, make sure the table you set up has enough terrain to make that fair for both people. Make sure there's, maybe buildings or rocky terrain or something that's going to be good for infantry. Make sure that there's places for tanks to be able to freely maneuver. Okay. Mode. Choose your side, Jaeger or Kaiju. I would have to go with Jaeger. My daughter would go with Kaiju. The Cheapskate Paint Shop. Where are your smoke markers from? So I think this was from a couple of battle reports ago. We have, both Jacob and I built smoke markers, and I forget where we saw the tutorial, but basically we made them ourselves, and we used something like a disc or a nickel or something as a base, a heavy base. I glued a paperclip armature sticking up, and then clump foliage like we use for bocage and stuff like that, just glued with super glue to that armature in the shape of a smoke plume, and then spray painted black and red and yellow and whatnot. So they're very easy to make, but I know Jacob used a lot more super glue than me, so his are super hard where mine are still a little spongy. But those fumes can get really powerful with super glue, so you want to be careful doing that. But yeah, we built them ourselves. They look really cool, and again, it's one of those things where it's a trade-off. That was like a week-long project making those things, whereas I just buy a lot of battle reports. I'm just using the old smoke that Battlefront sold and just putting cotton on top of the tanks that are destroyed, which looks almost as good. But those smoke markers are pretty cool. Matthew says, as a younger, aspiring historical wargamer, it is refreshing to see someone playing who isn't over 30. Well, I'm assuming they're not talking about me, but probably Jake and some of the other guys. Yeah. Our group, I think I'm probably the oldest in the group, skews kind of younger. Now, we were doing all these same games 10 years ago when everyone was really young. Jake, if you don't know, Jake is my son, and he started pretty young. I mean, he just started playing with the stuff I had. He really liked 40K when he was little. He still loves 40K, but he really got into Flames of War. He probably went to his first Flames of War tournament when he was probably 13 or something like that. So yeah, and Jake and Sam, I met them when they were really young. They were early 20s, playing Flames of War. So yeah, we screw, but older guys, younger guys, it's all fun. I think that both age brackets bring something cool and fun to the table, and I think having younger folks into a historical war game is nothing but good. Okay. Would you guys consider playing bolt action? For a long time I said I didn't want to play bolt action because, and not anything because of the rules, but just because I didn't want to collect twice the amount of terrain, just the same thing for a lot of occasion, but in a different scale. But the more I've been thinking about it, the more I've been looking at bolt action. Yeah, I might be more open to playing some bolt action. And let me know down in the comments below if you guys want to see bolt action on the channel. Let me know. I know that at least half of the guys, I think me, Jake, and Sam are interested in bolt action, and probably the other guys too. I don't know if I've talked to them, but it looks like a fun game. I haven't really played it, and the miniatures are looking really nice. So yeah, I think we could be convinced to do it and make that investment if it's something that you guys would think. What is your favorite Flames of War army? I would say U.S. Late War Sherman Company. I think we're there with the new Bulge book. I like the Easy 8s, the Jumbos. Those are my favorite types of tanks, so I love taking them. Close second would probably be a Hellcat company, American tank destroyers. If we go different time periods, early war, I would say my French, like a Somois company. So yeah, but yeah, we'll say American Sherman Bulge. Have you played in any Flames of War tournaments? Yes, we have. Um, I've been. I typically I didn't play a lot of tournaments in my gaming life because I didn't live in areas which were conducive to that. Once we were here in the greater Phoenix Valley area, I was able to play more, and Flames of War was the game of choice for tournament play. So I've played a lot of Flames of War tournaments, either at stores or we would host a tournament called Shifting Sands, and Shifting Sands would um, be a pretty big thing. We would use a giant room either at the city of Mesa here in Arizona or one of the larger game stores, and it was pretty fun. Our Shifting Sands tournaments were typically themed, so we might do, Soviet Bagration, or we might do. I hosted the D-Day one, which I think I'm going to be talking about that in a separate video. But yeah, I've played in a lot of them. Jake's played in a lot of them. I'll tell you a funny story about, I think, Jake's first kind of official tournament, and it was at a newer game store that was about a half hour away. And we drove out there to play, and I was matched up against this guy named Sam, who I'd never met, but he was friends with some of our other friends. And Jake came over, and again, I forget, he was like 13, and said he forgot his Churchills. No, they were Churchills. He left them at home. He had the rest of his army, but not his Churchills. So I had to drive home really fast to pick up his Churchills. My wife ran the Churchills out to the car so I could drive back to this game store to play Sam on time. And I got there just as they were starting to set up, so I was a little late. So my first introduction to Sam was being late to a tournament to start playing him. But Jake got his Cromwell or his Churchills and was able to play. So yeah, that was all right. Michael asks, this is a rules question for Flames of War. Can the Soviet command card under the cover of smoke be used by the Soviet player that has the first turn during a meeting engagement scenario? So I don't think so, because the card says, and I copied the card, at the start of the game, instead of placing one of your ranged-in markers, place a smoke screen as if this unit has fired a bombardment. So one, in most, if not all, engagement type scenarios, you don't place range-in markers. So there's no, you place smoke instead of placing a range-in marker. So if you can't place a range-in marker, I don't think you can place the smoke. And it does say this unit counts as firing a bombardment in the first turn, which if you're going first in engagement, you can't do. So I would say no. Now, I'm no official expert. That's just my interpretation of the card. Daniel Neal, with all the options for a veteran Sherman platoon in the new Bulge book and command cards, do you have a favorite mix in your platoons? Why, yes, I do. I like 4 tank strong platoons when we're talking veterans. I like 1 jumbo. I like 1 normal Sherman 75 that's been downgraded to the D-Day version, so the front armor 6. And then 2 either Sherman 76s or Sherman EZ8s, depending on the point breakdown. And then adding the AT-13 high velocity AP card to that platoon. So I really like that. I'm not really sold on the up armored card. Up armoring Shermans from 7 to front armor 8. But maybe that would work. But I've used them both, and it eats up a lot of points to up armor them, and AT-14 just goes right through front armor 8 almost as well as front armor 7. So it's kind of tough. But yeah, I do like having the jumbo in there to soak the shots off for high AT. I like having the regular Sherman in there to swap hits to if the jumbo is not in line of sight, or I just need to, a very high anti-tank like a King Tiger shooting at my platoon, instead of putting super high AT on the jumbo, which could possibly fail, maybe just dumping that onto the Sherman 75. Okay. And I think actually that is it for today. So I do want to say thanks for everyone who submitted questions. It's always fun to engage the community, and I like hearing from you guys, and I like answering in comments, but sometimes I thought a video would be fun, so here we are. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please do consider giving us a like and subscribe. Click that bell to receive notification when we release new content. As always, thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.